Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about the educational system in America and why I despise it. Which is a weird topic to bring up out of nowhere, even though I said this time I'd probably talk about my sketchbooks, but I was thinking about it after looking at my grades today. Because, I don't know, I was thinking about it. I was just remembering that, most people struggle a lot in public education in America, and I see why. Today, I'm talking about this as a person who's been academically inclined, but also as a person who has failed academically in the past. I, all throughout first, second, third, and when I was really young, through middle school, I was basically having Fs. F after F after F. The only thing that was different about me was that on my standardized tests, I actually did really high. My grades were really high on that. And that made me realize back when I was a kid that school is not meant for everybody. But sadly, it's a requirement here in America, but school is really not meant for everybody. And what I mean by that is you'll see kids that have just pretty basic struggles. They'll go into the school and they'll sit there for 6 hours every day. They'll listen, they won't do anything other than do what the teacher tells them to do, and they'll still fail again and again and again because a lot of the times schools don't have the resources to help kids out. And another thing is, school is not based on learning. It is based on memorization. And that's an issue. Obviously, that's a pretty big issue. One of my big points is, how in the world can you worry about actually learning something, or not worry about, but how can you learn something when it is presented in this fashion where this does this, and it's just a basic explanation without going any deeper, and with a grade attached to it? Sure, you might memorize it, but do you understand it? You know, there's differences between knowing a word and actually understanding it. If I were to say, let me think, the word incomprehensible. What does that word mean? If I didn't know what that word meant or understood it, I don't know the definition, I don't know the words in the definition, I would just say that word knowing the word itself but not understanding it. There's that huge difference there. And school is you just know the word. And I'm not saying literally, the vocabulary, teaching kids vocabulary is very important, yes. And I agree that, to a degree, a lot of public education is good for kids. It's just the way that it is presented. The way that it becomes a card game or a memory card so quick. The way that it is just constantly, you gotta memorize this, you gotta memorize that. You gotta write it down, you gotta take notes, and things like that. And they don't teach kids in public school how to properly take notes or how to understand and take apart what they are listening to or what they are being taught. They don't teach that in public school, or at least not many public schools, because I have friends who are actually extremely smart, but the public school system's completely screwed them over because they don't understand how to take notes, they don't understand how to study properly, and, study the way that, not properly, that's a big problem, properly, that word there. Before I go on anywhere else, before I continue my statement, properly is an issue. That is implying that there is a right way to do things for everybody. And that's the big issue with public school, is they think that there is a right way to do everything for everyone. And that is a huge issue in public school. And it's just wrong. Recently, going into college, I've recognized I like college a lot more than I did high school, than I did any time before that I was in public school. I enjoy it a whole lot more because college doesn't usually force you to learn a certain way. And you might be like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I'm going to use math as an example here because I'm kind of a math nerd, just a little bit. When I was in Algebra 1 and 2 in my old high school, as well as pre-calculus, the way they would teach how you do certain processes in math would leave out all the other possible ways you could do it. They would show the 2 most popular ways of doing something, but they would not show the rest. So some kids would be really struggling, and then they'll be told by some of the, not smarter, but some of the kids that are more in depth with math will tell them, hey, there's another way to do this. And they'll explain it, and they get it better that way than they did the other way. Like, the student has to teach the other students, because the teacher isn't told to teach the students about all the different methods that you can do something. So that's my whole point of, like, in public education, there's a right and there's a wrong way to do things. And that's a huge issue, too. Just the very rigid foundation that it is trapped itself in. It's like a pit of quicksand. And it's just not helpful to anybody. And then it comes into grading. Like, when public high school teachers grade things, they do it based off of the right way to them. The only reason that I have done so good in high school and college, or not college, much less college, but in high school particularly, is because I did things the way that the teacher believed was right. Not that the way that it is correct, objectively. It's very subjective. And that's a problem. It's just a problem. There is no right or wrong way to present something in an English class. You should have to, like, obviously there's going to be some criteria that you got to meet, things like that. But I shouldn't be marked down because I laughed during my presentation one time, and that was purely out of anxiety. Which is a situation I had. I had a class, I think it was web design. We had to do a presentation. And in the presentation, the people I was with, we like to joke around, but we always kept it still very serious. And the best way that I handle my anxiety is through laughing, because I do have social anxiety. In fact, that's why I don't just have my fat face in the camera, or you don't see just my desk. It's because I'm socially anxious of people actually knowing who I am. But a big way that I handle anxiety when I'm talking to people is, or like talking to a crowd, is laughing. I joke about things. I take a very serious situation and make it kind of funny, and that makes everything just way less tense. It turns the whole room from, like, I'm getting the death penalty to I'm okay and I can do this, I can finish this. And so this teacher, after the presentation was done, said, hey, you need to stick around after class. I will give you a pass to your next class. Stick around. And she talked to us for about a half hour about how when you present, the right way to do things is not to laugh, is not to make fun, and is not to joke. She also brought a couple other groups that had presented that day over. And that's one of the things where it's like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Although you might not understand why something might be right to somebody else, or like you might not be able to understand why it is not wrong for them to do this, you need to be open to admitting that something they're doing is okay. And it is quite frustrating to be told basically, hey, you're wrong because you said this or you did that. and I don't agree with that. So this whole, like, very, like, structured and, like, tense, rigid format to teaching is not teaching anybody anything. It's memorizing, it's memorization, it is repetition, but it also is redundancy. You'll go through high school hearing the same thing every year from freshman year to senior year in most of your classes, particularly your English and your math. You will hear the same repeated stuff over and over again, and it is not because you're trying to understand it. No, it is because you're being told to memorize. Like, I don't know the name of 80% of the stuff that I do in math at this very moment, and it's because public high school or public education does not actually make you understand what is what. You just memorize. And that's a huge problem. And just the fact that also that format does not work for everybody. Everybody learns differently. Everybody can focus differently. I'm not saying that school has to be 100% personalized for everybody, but it would help. 100%. I've seen kids who are super smart, super intelligent. They'll go out and, like, create something absolutely awesome. They'll go into school one day and just, like, fail a class or fail a couple classes, and it's not because they don't put the work in. It's not because they don't work hard on it. It's because the way that it's being presented is just so wrong to them. It doesn't feel normal and doesn't feel right. And I feel like for a long time I agreed with that, because I did have that problem for a while, but as of recent I have learned the little trick of, like, you're not trying to think like you usually think. Think as if you are the teacher yourself and you're seeing things through their eyes. And that is such a tough thing to put on kids, especially kids going through puberty. It is crazy. It's absolutely insane. And so today I just want to recognize how bad that is. And my solution to this, by the way, because I do need to put up a solution. I'm giving criticism, and I've realized I have not yet put a solution to this down, or, like, explained a solution. A solution would be smaller classrooms. A solution would be a different grading system. A solution would be understanding, not memorizing. For about 8 years, 7 to 8 years, I went to a school. I'm not going to say its name out loud. It's very local. It is not a public school, and it is not a private school. It is simply just not funded by the government. This school, I think, took me from a student who struggled to understand things to a student who is now doing high school and college at the same time. It took me from I failed kindergarten like twice to I'm now exceeding my high school classes and I am doing college, like full-time basically. And the way they did it there was so much different. And it's flawed still. There's some flaws, they're still figuring it out. But more or less, I still agree with their take on it. I will not be saying their, essentially, like, not mascot, but their founder's name out loud. But the origin of the school is that this person was doing a study, seeing if there were different ways to help children understand academics, like English, reading, you know, the basics, math, science, English. And she discovered different ways that could help that would not be usually taught in public schools. And the way that she did it was being in person and being connected to the students. You see, there's this big thing that's, like, been constant all throughout public education, and it is a disconnect from the teacher and the student. The students don't see the teachers as normal people. Students see the teachers as dictators, people who control them, tell them, hey, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. Like, they're very rigid to the students. And that creates this mental, like, disconnect between student and teacher. A lot of students feel like they can't talk to their teacher because they feel like their teacher is more of a boss to them than an actual teacher. And the way they did it at that old school that I was at for years was so, like, connected that I genuinely think the last teacher I had there might be one of the best people I've ever had any kind of, like teacher and student kind of relationship with. Because the way that they did it was so much different. In fact, this school is part of the reason why I'm making these daily entries. I'm making these daily entries because I'm trying to, I guess, get my opinions and my ideas out there, because I'm tired of having to, like, constantly just keep it bottled up. And the way that this teacher allowed us to do that was by doing these things called daily entries. And that's, you know, the name of this. This is that's the connection, that's the parallel there. But she would essentially have us write a few sentences up to a couple paragraphs. Every morning we'd spend about 30 minutes doing that. She would, quote-unquote, grade them, but she wouldn't actually grade them. What she would do is she would just leave input, like talking to the students on the paper. We would all get A's for every single one of them we did. Obviously, they're just like journals kind of things, but they allowed the teacher to deeply understand the students without having to be constantly, like, in their life. And I thought that was so interesting because she then took that information and used it to form her teaching, like how she how she taught. Sorry, a little brain fart. But she used all of that information to create a, essentially, format of teaching that would fit the classroom that she was in. And I think that's lost in public education. A lot of the time, they're stuck to a certain formula, a certain format, where they have to teach it this way. They don't just, like, they usually have a lot of, what's it called? They essentially usually have, like, a program where it's like you have a book, you have a textbook, and you take from that textbook, those are your lessons. And then you have printed out homework packets and things like that, and that kind of thing does not work for every student. And the way my old teacher worked around that was so incredible that it took me from, like, a failing student to all D's and C's student to I have A's and A pluses, and now I'm here where I'm, like, in college and things like that. So just even that experience alone can very much so change a student's way of thinking about education. And I think it's really important that from now on, or not now on, you know what I mean, like, that we start recognizing that everybody's different, everybody learns in their own way, and that public education just doesn't work for some people. I've had struggles with it in the past. Other people I've known have had struggles with it in the past. I particularly had struggles because they didn't actually teach me how to learn anything. As I said, it's just memorization, and that never felt right. It never felt good to do that. It just felt like I was getting grades for nothing. I mean, me personally, I found out that, like, memorizing this stuff was so easy that for the first 2 to 3 years of being in high school, I didn't take any notes at all. And honestly, for my 4th year, the only notes I'm taking is college. And that makes sense because college is a really, tough, and it's really tough and complex compared to high school. But my point is, I got to the point where I wasn't even learning, I was just memorizing. And that doesn't help anybody. That turns your brain to mush. In fact, I did have... I believe I did have a bit of a struggle last year. At the end of the year, I started getting into higher, college classes. They were... I think it was like one was a 200. Which, by the way, if you didn't know, in college, the way it works is, the higher the number, the harder it usually is. So I got into a History 202, and then I also got into, I think it was a Humanities 200. So it was all very, like, a lot of notes, a lot of heavy thinking, and I kind of fumbled it for the first half of the semester. And then I picked it back up near the end because I remembered all that I had learned from my old school. And yeah, I actually did really fine. I think I had a B plus in the one, but it was more like an A minus because it was an 89. And then the other one I had a, let me think, I think I had an A in that. Just like a flat A. Because I got a 100% on both of the exams for both of them. Oh, well, no. My humanities, I think I got an 80 out of 100 for that exam. But it was still enough to keep me at, like, an A. So, yeah, it's just like public education is failing kids. The kids aren't failing, the public education is. And I think that needs to be focused on more. Because if I would not have been taken out of that public school environment, I would not have made it to where I am today. And I think it's important to recognize that. I also would like to mention that I say this as a child of many teachers. Many of my parents. I'm not going to say who is in my life that is a teacher, but a lot of my family, they teach. And they all seem to share a very similar sentiment to me. So I want everybody to understand that, like, I kind of know where I'm coming from, but I also kind of don't. I've taken these ideas, I've taken them all from, like, what I've heard from people, my friends, what I've heard from teachers, what I've heard from professionals, you know, things like that. I'm not saying this without any validity or anything like that. I just realized this is like me saying, trust me, bro. No, but I'm saying all of this from a point of view where I have been deeply involved in the way that people teach. In fact, I kind of did like not a guest teacher, but like I was a helper, I guess. A teacher assistant for like a single day because I had a day off at my high school, and so I stopped by my old school. And I essentially was a teacher assistant for a day, and I helped a couple kids do a couple things and things like that. But yeah, I was like a teacher's assistant for like a day. That was really interesting. But I've been pretty deeply involved in that before in the past, so I just want to say that because I get worried about people assuming that I just don't know anything. I get scared of people thinking I'm stupid and I'm just rambling. Which I am rambling a lot. But anyway, I think that about rounds it out. I don't think there's going to be any editing in this video. So this is just going to be raw commentary because honestly, I think I worded it fine. I think there were a couple times where I might have jumped in my rants. But hey, that happens sometimes. I hope y'all have a great day, and I might be streaming tomorrow or Saturday, so keep your eye out for that. Also, I gotta ask you guys a question. Should I change my background? It looks kind of messy, if I do say so myself. I'm tempted to take a recording of that part of the desk and get like new lighting and stuff. Maybe get some incense in the background so it looks like fog. I want to go for a Halloween aesthetic. That's kind of like the whole point because we're getting close to October and I love Halloween. But yeah, this is about it. Also, I'm going as one of the flies from iMonster. I don't know which one yet, just one of them. So if y'all want to see a picture of that or a video of that, I guess leave it in the comments. I'm gonna pull a LA Beast now. Have a good day. I don't like that. Goodbye now.